Hello, folks. Today on Women Wrestlers You Should Know, sponsored by Premier Pro Wrestling, I'm going to talk about Linda McMahon. This woman is responsible for so much opportunity. When I was a kid, my father told me that when you're out, when you're with family or with whomever, friends, gatherings, you don't talk about religion, you don't talk about politics, and you don't talk about how much money you make. Doesn't that seem commonsensical, folks? Well, apparently not, because the whole nation's fighting over the stupidest shit ever, and I partook and once in a great while today partake in that, but I'm a much better man ever since I've taken my focus off of the aforementioned. So the point I'm trying to make is that I'm not trying to say I'm superior or I'm better than or any of that shit. What I'm saying is that when I act like that, I close myself off from a lot of valuable lessons I can learn. So that being said, if you can look beyond Linda McMahon's politics, there's one hell of a story there, one hell of a smart woman, one hell of a sharp woman who a lot of people could look to for inspiration. Linda McMahon was born Linda Edwards on October 4th, 1948 in New Bern, North Carolina. When she was 13 years old, she met 16-year-old Vince McMahon at church. The couple married in 1966, right after she graduated from high school. She joined her husband at East Carolina University and earned a BS degree in French and a certificate to teach. And in 1970, Shane McMahon was born, and then their daughter Stephanie followed in 1976. Shane married former WWE commentator Marissa Mazzola. Wonderful. That's got nothing to do with Linda for right now. After the birth of Shane, Linda became a paralegal at the law firm of Covington and Burlington in Washington, where she learned about intellectual property rights, contract negotiations, folks. Now let's talk about that for a moment. And ever since WWE's first real big three WrestleManias, they began to patent and trademark property, intellectual property, in specific names. And contract negotiations. Wow, that makes sense. The family moved to West Hartford, where she helped with many of the logistics of Capital Wrestling, known as the WWF, while Vince was away promoting his father's business in 1979. The family moved to Massachusetts when they purchased the Cape Cod Coliseum. The family founded Titan Sports in 1980 and 2 years later purchased Capital Wrestling. Around this time, Linda and her family settled in Greenwich, Connecticut. Now, the Cape Cod Coliseum, that's a story on its own. And I'll guarantee you, yes, Vince McMahon is educated, but the real smarts of that corporation and the inception anyway, was Linda McMahon. Vince and Linda, I'm sure she was heavily involved, were able to convince a land developer who bought and was going to wreck the Cape Cod Coliseum into strategically partnering up with them, meaning they would put in the sweat equity on the building that this guy bought for another kind of investment. And they were able to get this man, and I don't know his name off the top of my head, to be able to take said terms. In that process, the first thing they were able to do there was, of course, run wrestling and tape television for Vince's father's company as its own independent contractor. Then they signed leases or a lease with a semi-pro or minor league or triple A hockey team, which helped pay the bills. Now, this just gets to tell you how much heart, along with the brilliant mind, and also the motivation that Linda McMahon had. She learned very quickly a couple of things, and one of those things was how to charge top dollar for her first ringside or front row for any entertainment that they had by calling it a VIP seat. This article, or the next article I'm going to refer to, says she used to make meatball sandwiches for the fans. No, she would make hors d'oeuvres. And one of the hors d'oeuvres was if you were sitting in the front row of an event or ringside for wrestling and you paid this much more for your seat, Linda made hors d'oeuvres, and one of the hors d'oeuvres were meatballs with a toothpick through them that you'd get at your family parties and other events. See what I'm saying? She wasn't above putting in the work, as she cooked those herself at her own home and then brought them there and kept them warm. WWE expansion. With the purchase of Capital Wrestling, the family owned the World Wrestling Federation, now known as WWE, which was the dominant wrestling promotion in the Northwest at that point. The company had only 13 employees. By the time Linda resigned as CEO of the company in 2009, the company had over 500 employees spread across 8 offices in 5 different countries. Now, once again, Vincent McMahon Sr. did not want to sell Junior World Wrestling Federation because he thought he would fail. And where they got the money to put down on the World Wrestling Federation was they had such a great relationship with that developer that they were working their partnership deal on the Cape Cod Coliseum. He believed in them so much that he came on and backed them for their down payment with an agreement to be paid back later. Now, that being said, Senior had Junior on such a short lease, enter Mrs. McMahon again, that if he had missed one of the payments that he was buying the company with toward his father, he could have repossessed the company. Linda saw to it that that didn't happen. Optimizing, being creative, using her education, using her inspiration, and forward thinking as much as Vince McMahon. Vince McMahon was creative. Vince McMahon was a risk taker with Kong-sized balls. That being said, Linda's must have been pretty damn big herself. And also, she was the rudder of the ship. You can have a boat. Let's say you have a speedboat with a tremendous engine. Okay? You paid big money, and you guys know what boats go for today. God bless you that can afford them. Without a steering wheel and a rudder, that's what Linda McMahon was. The boat is no goddamn good. It's a pile of junk. Do you understand what I'm saying? WWE legacy, the good and bad. The record of WWE became a focal part of her political campaign. On the good side of the ledger, the company had done tremendous amount of charitable work, and they do. I don't know how, as individuals or a company, they're able to do what they do at the Make-A-Wish Foundation, because when I'm in something intense like that, oh, it just rips the heart out of me, and it takes a special kind of person to do so. So anybody that runs that down on the internet, and that's why I hate this internet wrestling community, you try it. Yes, it gets them positive press, but they've been doing it for how long? However, her critics point to the fact that she helped run a company that peddled, quote, end quote, and this is our useless-ass United States Congress, the same Congress that went after rock and roll, specifically heavy metal, back in the day. Oh, so we'll get back to this now. However, the critics point to the fact that she helped run a company that peddled questionable content to children, classifies wrestlers as independent contractors instead of employees, and has seen many of their former stars die at a young age. That's entertainment as a whole, you know? And today, they are learned so much from those past mistakes that they do so much for the performer that has addiction, you know? The other part of it is independent contractors. Yes, they are independent contractors because as employees, they may as well cut their pay by 75%. I would rather be an independent contractor that forms his own S corporation and gets paid all that money and then takes every tax benefit that I possibly can to support me and mine. Do you understand? So the IRS came after him, but that's not the first time the government came after him. Whenever somebody makes money, whenever somebody's in the limelight, whenever somebody gets too big, whenever they're afraid, they go after them. And these kind of fights are the easiest fights for these different attorneys general because they can fight these from their desks. They don't have to leave the office, and going after the McMahons or WWE puts their name out there in public and usually makes them renowned, and they end up getting the promotion that they want or elected at the next election. Linda's positions. According to her campaign website, she believes that people and not the government creates jobs. She feels that deficit spending must end. And you know what? I'm not even going to read this because I said don't talk about politics. And I think if I do talk about politics with this one, it's going to turn some of you guys off and you can't see the forest through the trees. And the forest in this scenario is a brilliant, inspired woman who's a tremendous example for all of mankind, especially the entrepreneur. You with me? So, this is another reason why I hate the internet so much. Just hang on and listen to the title of this. 10 backstage stories about Linda McMahon we can't believe. Oh, we can't believe. Now wait till you hear this BS. Bear with me a second. I'm an old guy and I'm trying to do two things at once. Never a good thing. Oh, and by the way, on the same page, there's 10 of the most embarrassing McMahon moments, you know. Number 10, and you tell me, I don't know how this is embarrassing by any stretch of the imagination. She met Vince at church. Okay, she met Vince at church. The McMahon family isn't exactly synonymous with good Christian values. Who the F says? Boasting a history highlighted by a 2006 angle, whatever. And like, all I can tell you in regards to this scam that they met at a church is that it's an article from 2012 from Politico. That's all we need to know. Being fine with Kane's tombstone. For those of you that don't know, the tombstone is a wrestling move, okay? Let's see what this has to do with something or has to do with anything. Fall 2003 saw a stark shift in Kane, that's Glenn, Kane's character as he unmasked for the first time and went on a tear. His violent actions included delivering a tombstone pile driver to Linda McMahon. Oh, come the F on. I thought they were going to say something about the fact that it was a dangerous move, and Linda said it was okay. Linda McMahon showing you the heart that she has and the trust and faith that she had in Kane took a tombstone on television as part of his storyline. And I bet to this day they still laugh about it. And I don't see that being something that we're shocked about. That's something you should be inspired with, man. I mean, am I lying? So, the other thing that people don't know about, and I'm just going over this now with my associate, if you will. We've got a whole bunch of awesome retro action figures. The WWE, WWF action figure was the mastermind of Mrs. Linda McMahon. Action figures are a fundamental part of wrestling merchandise, a favorite toy among kids and increasingly collectible among adults. Nowadays, it's easy enough to take it as a given that these dolls will be part of WWE's business model, but they had to start somewhere. In an interview with Sports Illustrated, Linda revealed that she masterminded the original idea of WWE selling action figures after watching how invested her son Shane was in playing with his G.I. Joes. it may only be fitting that the idea for WWE iconic action figures would come straight from a mother. You see how this woman thinks and thinks out of the box? With all that she had on her plate, in addition to raising 2 kids on top of that, she gets inspired by something simple in her surroundings and took the ball and ran with it. I can bet you right now that since she incepted the WWE WWF action figure, they probably outsell the G.I. Joe brand by now. Number 7, she knew about Vince having affairs. Well, how do they know? Linda never made a direct statement about it. And once again, we don't know for sure if Vince had affairs. Things aren't always as they seem, folks. But here's what they're going by in an interview with Playboy when WWE and Playboy had a relationship or a start of a relationship. Vince never said it. Vince suggested that Linda was aware of the affairs. He didn't necessarily suggest she approved or gave her blessing. Yes, folks, this claim has absolutely no proof to it. It's just one of those things where they take shots, hope for the best, and you should see the amount of clickbait on this freaking article. However, these are things that I didn't know, and I thought you guys would find really, interesting. I sure do, and it's given me a lot of great opportunities to wax poetic about the McMahons. This one is that she took the Ultimate Warrior's calls. Not sure how that ends up being something that's so shocking, you know. A lot of businesses, the never say never rule applies. Yes, she put that relationship and fixed the tumultuous relationship between WWE and the Ultimate Warrior, and the fans won again, and that peace was made before Jim Hellwood passed, which is a great effing thing. Number 5, she threatened Vince before his match with Stephanie. Again, there's absolutely no direct statement, but a mother would tell her husband to be careful with their daughter under any circumstances. Not sure why this is shocking. Especially, we know she is a good mother. The proof? Look at how well her children are doing, and they don't have as many enemies as you would think, or as people who have been responsible and a part of, and the children of, a friggin' empire. Now, here's another one. I'm going to read this one to the fullest. I don't know why this would be number 4. We should be shocked that Linda McMahon was excited to sign Booker T as a talent. Sounds to me like that would be a successful and very wise choice, but let's read it. Booker T was a homegrown talent for WCW who had spent nearly a decade working his way up the card in the company to arrive at as its last world champion before WWE bought them out. Booker reinvented himself time and time again under the WWE banner, adding to his legacy. Tell us something we don't know, other than the fact that you're a little shady there with the homegrownness. Booker T paid a lot of dues before he got noticed by WCW. Anyway, while especially in retrospect, it may feel like a no-brainer for WWE to have wanted to sign Booker T. Do you see what I'm saying here? In retrospect, in a 2014 interview with the Boston Herald, she revealed that Booker T's first time meeting Linda McMahon was a big reassurance as she openly greeted him and expressed her relief that they'd finally signed him, suggesting that the company had their eye on him for some time. How is this shocking locker room behavior, folks? Are you with me? It was great for business, and really at the end of the day, he's one of the most recognizable black wrestlers in the world. All right. Number 3, JBL was nervous to interview her. By the time JBL had a working relationship with Fox Business, he'd been working for WWE for quite some time and knew Linda McMahon. Nonetheless, he said on Sean Mooney's podcast that he was nervous when he got tasked with interviewing her on television. Duh. According to JBL, he was confident that Linda would be a great interview. Yeah. He was self-conscious, though, about his own role, knowing the interview was important to her, and it was because she was campaigning and she eventually got elected, and that there are more eyes and a more diverse audience listening in than he was accustomed to from the wrestling world. Well, that makes a lot of sense, but I don't know how in God's green earth, once again, that is shocking backstage behavior by Linda McMahon. Number 2, Hulk Hogan versus Andre the Giant was her favorite match. Not sure how that's shocking either. In a sense, she grew up with both of those men. Doesn't that make sense to you? And also, that's I don't know how many people's favorite match. It's one of the most historic moments in the history of pro wrestling, unless you're a smart mark today that's taken all the fun out of the industry. So therefore, I don't know why you'd be so obsessed with it. But anyway, Linda McMahon has generally described herself as someone who enjoys wrestling, but had never given it much attention till she became romantically involved with her eventual husband, Vince. It makes sense that from there, her athletes would lean toward entertainment value and money-making over technical masterpieces. No, it's got nothing to do with it. Technical masterpiece. Good versus evil, Andre versus Hogan, was unbelievable for the business, for the industry, period. And this is nothing shocking about it. Anyhow, this one they reached for. Let's see how it pans out. I'm reading the title to it as I'm reading it to you. Number 1 reason, or the number 1 most shocking backstage behavior by Linda McMahon. Lance Cade's father holds a grudge against her. While most people from the wrestling community seem to have positive things to say about Linda McMahon, the father of the late Lance Cade was less complimentary in discussing his perceptions of her. Again, folks, please see the word perceptions. 2010, Linda was on the Senate campaign trail when asked about Cade, who had recently passed. She suggested she didn't know much about him and only might have met him once. It stands to reason she distanced herself from a potential scandal related to a former passing of a WWE superstar. Cade's father took exception to these comments, calling her a liar in an interview because he had personally seen McMahon interact with her son more than once at WWE functions. But let me ask you this, folks, in regards to this last one, and there's no two ways about it. This is a tragedy. Do you understand? It's a tragedy. Linda suggested she didn't know much about him and might have only met him once. Maybe she saw him passing in the hallways. Maybe she talked to him more than once. But I don't think there was any way in God's green earth she was dancing around anything to do with this. I know she's got a good heart. She's a smart woman. It had nothing to do with nothing. But with 500 employees and who knows how many wrestlers at that time, I'm sure she wasn't that close to him, especially with as busy as she was. Does that make sense? So I don't see how that makes her the asshole by any stretch of the imagination, you know. Here's something I'm going to read to you, and then I will put this to bed. But the reason I'm talking about Linda McMahon so much is, once again, this woman and Vincent, what they've created together is amazing. It is the American dream, okay? The absolute American dream. This is what I wanted when I got married with any business, just not pro wrestling. But the time when they got married, this is what they did. And they are my parents' exact age today. My mother and father have had one hell of a journey. And right now, my mom, I believe, is 76. My dad is 81, and she's dying of cancer. The fight is not done yet, but she's going to pass. The cancer has spread, okay? But she's still eating. She hasn't lost any weight, and she's not miserable yet from the chemo. And I'll be goddamned, those two are amazingly happy together. They made it, okay? They're going to die wanting for nothing, even if they live to be 100. But they are there for each other, and they have a relationship that has worked through everything. They're so close right now. I'm proud and I'm jealous. All right, 10 real facts fans forget about Linda McMahon. So this one hopefully is ending on a high note. I hope it's not craziness. Okay, cool. She grew up as a tomboy. Yes, I've read that in more than one place. And it doesn't surprise me. It shouldn't surprise anybody, even though they're probably trying to allude to the fact that she might be lesbianic. Whatever. She married Vince McMahon when she was only 17. That probably means that Vince McMahon was 20. When they got married in 1966, this wasn't that goddamn shocking. My great-grandparents, who were the generation before Vince and Linda, got married in Italy when he was 16 and she was 15, and they hopped the boat to the United States of America, where they came through Ellis Island. My mother was 17 when my father and her got married, and I was born right after my mom's 18th birthday. I don't see how that's so scandalous. She wanted to become a French teacher and a pediatrician. Think about that for a second, okay? When we're talking about the scandalous Linda McMahon, or the cold-hearted Linda McMahon, or the Linda McMahon that doesn't care. She didn't aspire to be a businesswoman. She found out she had a knack for it, and she implemented. She wanted to be a pediatrician. What kind of person actually wants to be a pediatrician? Somebody that gives a shit about children, folks. Maybe that would explain why they do what they do in regards to children and sick kids in the United States. She worked as a receptionist. We went through that. She wasn't a receptionist. With her bachelor's degree in French, she worked as a paralegal. Maybe she started as a receptionist, but she went into being a paralegal, and being bilingual helped her there. Number 6, she and Vince once filed for bankruptcy. Here we go again with the scandal, or the alleged scandal, or what they want you to believe is a scandal. For those of you that don't know, and I wish more young people knew it, Walt Disney, okay, one of the most successful companies of all time, spawned by Walt Disney. Walt Disney filed for bankruptcy 7 times. 7 times. Number 5, she used to cook meatball sandwiches for the fans. They got that wrong. I heard it, or I read it to you guys and told you about it. She knew about Vince McMahon's affairs. Every WWE fan will remember the times that Vince McMahon used to book himself in angles of him physically engaging with female superstars. He had such moments with superstars like Trish Stratus, Stacy Keibler, Tori Wilson, Dawn Marie, Candice Michelle, and a few others. Okay. Where is any shred of proof that Linda McMahon knew about affairs, or anything aside from word of mouth that Vince actually had affairs? Number 3, I'm glad to see this. Again, she was responsible for the first WWE WWF action figures, which that is just brilliance. Now, listen to this. When they use the term self-made, okay, Linda McMahon has a net worth of over $1.6 billion in an era where everybody is so jealous of what everybody else has, which is beyond me. She started in a trailer home, in a mobile home with Vince McMahon, and today she is worth $1.6 billion. Though Vince McMahon holds most of their family's assets to give Linda some security against political accusations, she still has a personal net worth of $1.6 billion. Linda McMahon reportedly holds just under 1% WWE share, while her husband holds almost 42%. But still, her chunk of shares in the company is worth $37 million, which made her one of the wealthiest members of the Donald Trump's cabinet. Vince and Linda made a joint financial disclosure in 2017. Now you see, a joint financial disclosure, that's what they mean by proof or irrefutable proof. This is the only thing I've read up to this point that has anything to do with proof, which allowed billions in assets, including hedge fund investments, WWE stock, real estate, and other forms of property. Well, the fact that they and Linda owns the stock in the company proves to you that she believes in her company, she believes in herself, she believes in her husband, and she believes in her daughter and son-in-law. Now listen to this one. Another one, and I don't care if you're Republican, I don't care if you're Democrat, I don't care if you're Green Party. Linda McMahon spent $100 million of her own money in failed Senate campaigns. Do you know how much all these politicians have lost running? I can't think of many, and it's very rare that they win the first time and they spend millions, sometimes hundreds of millions to get to that seat. Linda McMahon left WWE in 2009 to run for a seat in the United States Senate from Connecticut in the 2010 midterm election as a Republican. She lost the election by 11%, which is close, folks, to Democrat Richard Blumenthal. She once again ran for the seat in 2012 and lost to Chris Murphy, making her second consecutive defeat in her bid for Senate. Now, let me explain something, folks. And this really bothers me. When somebody is out there campaigning and they lose, or they lose especially by a narrow margin, they don't run again. Well, when they go out there and they're making promises and they're making statements and they're talking about their beliefs and they're talking about the good they're going to do and the changes that they're going to make, if they fail and just give up and never run for Congress or that Senate seat again, they did us a favor, because if they give up that easy, it proves to me they weren't that goddamn convicted, and this is a convicted woman. She convicts to something and then she makes it work. She had repeatedly spent $100 million of her own money in her two failed campaigns. Folks, the difference between Linda McMahon and any politician on the right or the left is she's in that top percentile that spent, quote, $100 million of her own money. Do you see what I'm saying? Now, again, left or right, it's not about Trump. It's not about whomever, man. But she was, in fact, a hands-on expert to run an F with the Small Business Association for the United States. And from what I hear, she did a great job, and she didn't make too many enemies there. So that's it, folks. You can't talk about women's wrestling today or any wrestling today without Linda McMahon. You know, once again, I'm going to go ahead and say you have a Maserati, a new Maserati, man, with everything on it, except for a steering wheel and your left front tire. You can't go anywhere. Well, that's pretty much as I see Linda McMahon. Vince and Linda McMahon have been partners in life. They've been partners in parenthood. They've been partners in a marriage. They were partners in one of the most successful companies to date with such a long run, World Wrestling Federation, which then became World Wrestling Entertainment. Am I lying when I say that everybody should be motivated and inspired, and I think she should be revered, you know, and respected for all that she's achieved? I don't know. Maybe I'm crazy. If you think I'm crazy, go ahead and post in the comments. But to be honest with you, I was jacked to cover Linda McMahon. And, personally, I've seen Linda in the locker rooms, I've always, bowed my head and said hello in a polite manner, the same way I would with anybody that was my mother's age and my father's age or my parents' age, especially a woman. Some women don't like to shake hands, so I didn't hold my hand out like a mark. And it was just like a paying homage, There's so much opportunity, and there has been so much opportunity to all walks of life that have benefited from this woman's drive, her intellect, and her heart and innovation, And she's never been like unapproachable, but you can tell when you see this woman, now's not the time to go up there and try to ingratiate yourself because she obviously has her hands full, focused. You know what I'm saying? Again, folks, this is Women Wrestlers You Should Know. I'm Randy Ritchie, and it's in commemoration of Women's History Month. Please like and subscribe, as we are putting no YouTube commercials or ads on these. And also, please peruse the description and ways to help support Premier Pro Wrestling.